We're going to be in Mark 9 as we talk about our vision and values. I want to talk about growth. That is one of our values that you find on our website. And so I'm talking from Mark 9, verses 14 to 29. And I want to talk about start small, but start now. Start small, but start now. And I have to tell you that Rebecca, who runs our cafe, reminded me of this phrase. This phrase is from Wayne Cadero, who pastors a church in Honolulu, great communicator. And she reminded me of that phrase. So I need to give her an assist. So start small, but start now. And it's about growth. So, you know, what is the Christian life like? What is it meant? How do we grow in this Christian life? Well, you know, most of us have a Western model that if we're going to learn anything, we go and take a class, right? So you go and take a class and they give you the workbook or a manual, or you're reading a book and you're reading all about skydiving. You want to learn how to skydive. So you're reading this book and then you learn that how the weather is and wind patterns are really important where you're skydiving. You learn where the best places are to skydive. Like you don't want to skydive in the middle of New York City, right? So you want to choose where you're going to skydive. You read about what kind of planes are best for skydiving in terms of wind draft. You read about what kind of parachute that you might want to use when you're skydiving, and you study all this. You learn about the different positions that you can get for diving and what gets you faster, what slows you down. And you go through all this course and the instructor is applauding you along, and finally you take that final exam and you pass the final exam, and the instructor says, "Yay, you are a skydiver." And a student asks, "Well, are we ever going to put on a parachute? Are we ever going to get in a plane? I'm just curious, you know. We passed the course, but we actually have never been in a plane yet, you know." My growth in Christianity, my awakening in Christianity began when I put on the parachute. And I began to actually realize they're actually supposed to do something with this. And so they helped me put on the parachute to get ready to skydive. And I had never done that before. I needed someone to help me do that. And then we walked out to the plane together, and we're walking out to the plane together. I'm asking myself if I've lost my mind completely, which of course I had. And so we're walking out there, and a lot of things are going on in your mind, and you get up to about 10,000 feet, and the door is open this entire way, and you're kind of thinking about the process and what's going on here. And then at 10,000 feet, they say, "Okay, now it's time to go." And you stand on the edge of the door there thinking, again, have I lost my mind completely? And everyone's telling you, you have. And you leap out. And when you leap out, you reckon, well, actually, there's nothing to hold on to. There's nothing to grip. There's no safety nets. There's nothing that you can grab. You are out there with a lot of wind and air and a lot of blue sky on this particular day, flying in the middle of nowhere, grasping madly for something to make it solid, right? To secure yourself. And you're praying all the way down. It makes your prayer life come alive, by the way. Oh God, oh God, oh God, until you finally land, and God help you. You hope you land safely without breaking anything, right? I don't know about you, but I was taught a lot in Christianity at the beginning. Just read. Just read, and, you know, and maybe you want to believe it or whatever. But actually, growth begins when you read it, you believe it, and you act on it. Can you say that with me? Read it, believe it, act on it. And acting on it is jumping out. And you know what? It is a leap. I want to remind you that faith is spelled R-I-S-K. And unless you act on it, it remains a theory. Theoretical Christianity is useless. It does nothing for you. It's just an idea in your head. But when you actually have to act on it, something happens. So I love the fact that you are all my living illustration of that, because just a few moments ago, we had an impression that we should pray for people with certain physical issues. Who prayed for them? I didn't pray for them. You prayed for them. Well, I did from up here, but you were the one who laid hands on them. So you acted. And I know of 8 or 9 people that indicated they were 80% or better, and there's a bunch of other people that I know things were happening with while we were praying, so we're not done with that, by the way, and we'll pray more later. A bunch of people were healed also in the first service, and more will be healed later this morning, I'm just telling you, because we saw it in the first service already. Why? Because we act on it. See, we believe that what Jesus says is actually true, and it's true for today. And if it's true to today, then we actually act on it. And when we act on it, faith grows. And so the disciples had some experience already by the time we get to this story of the demonized boy and his dad who said, "Help my unbelief." And that is that the disciples had already been sent out by two. If you looked at Mark chapter 7, 2 chapters before this, they'd already been sent out. And it says in chapter 7, it says they had actually healed the sick already. They'd actually driven out demons already. Then they went and they watched Jesus multiply food for 5,000, which they distributed. And then Jesus multiplied food for 4,000, which they distributed. And so they've seen signs and wonders and miracles. And so when we get to the story, we're trying to figure out what's happening here. What is the problem? Aren't they continuing to grow? So chapter 9, verse 14, Peter, James, and John were with Jesus, I should say, on what was probably Mount Tabor, for what we call the Mount of Transfiguration. They come down to this. When they came to the other disciples, they saw a large crowd around them and the teachers of the law arguing with them. As soon as the people saw Jesus, they were overwhelmed with wonder and they ran to him. What are you arguing about with them? He asked. So I want you to notice several things. That when the disciples could not drive out that demon, they ran into a limitation. They're in a learning, growing opportunity. That's what happens when we hit the wall there. And as that happens, what happens? An argument starts. Because they were not successful right then and there, an argument starts. So the teachers of the law said, and began to accuse them, criticize them, etc., whatever it may be. So when we can't, we argue. When we have no spiritual power, we protest and create a fight. When there's no anointing and we cannot do something that we feel like we should, people begin to argue. When we feel insecure and inadequate to the task and it hasn't gone the way we think it should, people begin to argue, or we argue. You see, those who can't argue with you, and I would rather be someone who is trying to pray for someone and maybe not doing it very well, rather than someone who's never tried and yet criticizing. So I'd rather at least do it poorly than not do it at all. And so good on all of you who were praying for people earlier, because some people were touched by God and are feeling a whole lot better now. Thank you very much, right? Because you acted, you did something. But when we can't, we argue. When we feel powerless, we argue. When we're not feeling inspired by the Holy Spirit because we haven't asked him what he's doing and we're not following him, we argue, or people argue with us. And we find ourselves in a crowd. You're not supposed to be in a crowd. Amen. There's a woman who ran, Stanford just closed this, but Renee de Rosetta was a technical research manager at the Stanford Internet Observatory, and she says this, okay, so this is a non-believer saying this, right? She says, if you make it a trend, you make it true. Crowds lie. The more people, the less truth. Where did she come up with this? Stanford did this massive study on internet and influencers and how people think, what internet does to their mind. And the more you repeat a bad idea, the more likely people are to believe it. Just keep repeating it. Just keep repeating the lie, which is what Satan does. Just keep repeating the lie and people will begin to believe it. But the disciples have decided to start small, but start now, and following what Jesus was modeling to them, doing right in front of them. And so they're coming out of that crowd. That crowd will not impact them. You see, mental maps is what's formed offline by what we read online. Mental maps are a collection of ideas by which we navigate life. When we give our attention, it will shape the person we become. What we think about, we become. You are what your mind looks at. You are what you contemplate. See, attention is the beginning of devotion. And so when the writer of Hebrews, set your thoughts, your mind on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. That's not just a nice statement. That is actually a position of alignment that empowers us to be thinking right things in our mind and rightly align ourselves with God's truth. And that is what Jesus wants. Why? Look at what happens to the people. They're arguing at one moment, and as soon as the people saw Jesus, verse 15, they're overwhelmed with wonder. Do you notice that? They went from a crowd that was arguing. When Jesus is present, all of a sudden they're filled with wonder. Wonder is an indication of glory. Wonder, that phrase wonder is applied about 4 times, and every time it's applied, it's something supernatural has happened. Something that we cannot explain, but we feel different has happened, and it gets our attention. That's wonder. It's awesomeness. It's like, all right, we were arguing, and we were this crowd that was busy fighting about this nonsense, and then holiness, something that's glorified, comes into our midst that is not something that we can explain, and it's awesome. And that's Jesus. And that changes what happens here. But see, when we're growing, we want to grow according to a plan that we have set in motion. How many of you are living the life exactly as you planned it? Exactly. None of you. If you are, you're probably lying. I want to talk to you later. None of us are living the life we planned. There's always something that happens in life. So a woman and her husband have 3 kids. They're very happy because the youngest is now 5. They're all out of diapers. The youngest is in kindergarten. Yay, says the mom. I'm so happy. She's able to go back to her old company. They fall into a routine. The kids are all in school. They got a pattern of life. There's more income now because she can go back to work. Life is wonderful. And then she gets pregnant. And she's mad. She's angry. She's angry at her husband. She's angry at God. Why could you do this to me? She's angry. Because how she had planned life is now being interrupted. This father's life is interrupted. This little boy did not get up one morning demonized. Someone in the family system was involved in the occult or something demonic. Someone was actively involved in sinning in some way. It could have been that father, could have been the mother, could have grandparents, uncles. Demonic evil needs permission. Someone in the family system has to give permission for evil to come and occupy. Because a child is not yet in the age of culpability, which is usually about 12. And so a child would be victim to whatever the parents have decided that they would allow into the household. And I think the father is getting a clue that what he has done or what he has permitted. See, sometimes it's not so much what we've done, but what we've permitted, what we've allowed to influence our children or someone in our household. All of a sudden that is hitting him, and he's recognizing that this is not what I want for my kids. And now something has to be broken in the thinking pattern and his mental maps. I like the way James Clear in Atomic Habits puts it for those who are caught in the crowd. Humans are herd animals. We want to fit in, to bond with others, and earn the respect and approval of our peers. Watch out. Watch out if that's you. Such inclinations are essential to our survival. For most of our history, our ancestors lived in tribes. Becoming separated from the tribe, or worse, being cast out, was a death sentence. People are embraced or condemned according to their beliefs. So one function of the mind may be to hold beliefs that bring the belief holder the greatest number of allies, protectors, or disciples, rather than beliefs that are most likely to be true. And so when people have to choose between maintaining a relationship with friends or family or actually believing the facts, people will believe a lie so they keep the relationship with friends and family. Behind the scenes, every time you go online and look at an influencer or something on TikTok, you're seeing something that somebody is believing a lie or participating. I'm not saying 100%, but a lot of the influence is not from God. I'll tell you that. So we choose between the two. You see, facts don't change our minds. Friendship does. Relationship does. Love does. So Jesus says, bring the boy to me. And so they bring him. And as soon as they bring him, the demonic begins to act out, because demonic does one of two things. For most people who are demonized, that is demonically harassed, it's hidden. You do not see it. But the minute you begin to pray and begin to address it, it manifests. It's beginning to show itself in different ways. And I prayed for literally hundreds of people that have shown that. I just prayed for a couple last month. And when you see that, what happens is when they're discovered, they begin to manifest and they begin to act out and they get dramatic. So what's happened is the demonic has been identified by Jesus and now it's manifesting and it's coming out. I like the way that John Mark Comer puts it. He says this, could it be that our souls are at war with another world? Ungodly ideas are primary stronghold of evil in the human self and in society. Today, ungodly ideas are weaponized to masquerade as reality. One definition of reality is what you run into when you're wrong. Ouch. The devil is the spirit of unreality. Evil wants us to live in unreality. You see, it's not so much that we tell lies as we live them. And so part of our journey is to say, I'm going to push against this and its influence on my life. So I'm going to start small, but I'm going to start now. I'm going to start small, but I'm going to start now. So what is that step for you? You want to read the Word, you want to believe the Word, you want to act on the Word. What happens when you act on the Word? You just witnessed it a few minutes ago as people are touched by the Spirit. You jumped out of the plane. You jumped out of the plane. And what happened? People were healed. People were transformed. People feel a whole lot better than they did before. And so the Father cries out in verse 22, but if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us, because this is a family issue. We're all impacted by this. Anytime that you participate in something that is evil or demonic or unhealthy, you think, I'm siloed, I'm good, doesn't impact somebody else. That is a lie from the pit of hell. The decisions that you make impact other people. They do. There's a whole spirit realm that, I don't know if you're aware of it, but if you're aware of it, when you make that decision, you're permitting and opening a door to demonic that will begin to slowly, gradually eat at your soul, and others around you will begin to notice it and feel it. They may not say anything, but if they're Christians, they will begin to notice it. You can actually feel it on people. And demonic is attracted to certain areas and situations. One of the things that we see, for example, in Matthew 12 is the demonic, it says, likes to go to arid, dry places. Now, we do not know if that means literally arid, dry places like deserts, or it means more dry places in the soul. We're not sure, but I think it probably has a little to do with both. So it was very early one morning. I was driving to Sedona, and I got up early. The sun hadn't even risen yet, and I packed up, and I got about 460 miles from my house. It's about 6.5 hours to get there, not including the stops. So I'm kind of factoring this all out. And as I'm driving down to the 10. I thought, I need to get a cup of coffee. So I pull off and I get a cup of coffee. And instead of going through the drive-thru, I actually went into the place. Can you imagine that? And I got a cup of coffee, and I think it was really a grace of God, because I had turned off my engine and gone in. Because when I came back with my coffee and got in my car and I'm all ready to go, nothing. It wouldn't turn over. Tried several times. Didn't want to flood the engine, but I could tell, I bet it's the battery. I bet you anything is the battery. And I'm so annoyed, and I call AAA, and the guy comes, and he's looking at it, said, yeah, it's the battery. And I'm thinking about, off schedule here. I need to get going, man. What? This is really annoying. And he's there, and he's putting in the new battery, and I'm just so frustrated that I began to think, if you're on the 10 and you get past Indio, what's out there? Yeah. And what if I discovered my battery was out there? Yeah. I just encountered the grace of God. And in my annoyance and frustration, I had to slow down and think, you know what? God is being really nice to you right now. And he's interrupting you. He's interrupting your plans. He's interrupting your day. He's interrupting your life. And this father's life was interrupted. God interrupts us out of his grace. God interrupts us to get our attention. God interrupts us because our son is in a really bad place and he's not doing well. And only Jesus will set him free. And so the father has enough desperation that he's actually going to get out of the crowd. You see, when you're in the crowd, you have no voice. When you stay in the crowd and you're thinking like the crowd and you're believing whatever you're reading online, you are part of the crowd and you've lost your ability to speak your own voice. When we get out of the crowd, we find our voice. And this father is so desperate now that he's yelling out from the crowd, "That's my son. I need help." He's desperate. Are you desperate? Are you desperate enough to get out of the crowd and to cry out, "Jesus, I need you. I need help. I need your touch"? And so it says in verse 25, when Jesus saw that a crowd was running to the scene, he rebuked the impure spirit. In other words, he does not want a crowd. We are not doing entertainment right now, Jesus says. You know what? If that was today, people would say, evangelists say, "Bring in the cameras and the lights, make sure my makeup is right. I'm going to do a deliverance. Make sure we get a close-up on this demonized kid. Let's do this," right? Jesus does not cater to any crowds. He does not minister for people. He ministers to his Father who loves these people. And because his Father loves this boy, Jesus is going to love this boy. But he's not doing it for anyone else. He's doing it first for his Father, and then for the physical, earthly father that is there. Jesus is not entertained. If you encounter anything in ministry which is entertaining you, and they got a lot of lights and sound and all kinds of other things, beware. Beware. This is not for entertainment. And so before the crowds can get there, Jesus is going to deal with this thing. Before the crowds can get there, he's going to deliver the boy and drive out evil. Notice he commands him, "Come out of him and never return again." The demon shrieks, and the boy looks like he's dead, and Jesus lifts him up. And the disciples say, wait. Why couldn't we do this? When they go off into pride, why could we not do this? I mean, we've done this before. You sent it out 2 by 2. If you remember, I mentioned back in chapter 7 of Mark that they drove out demons. So why couldn't they do this? A dad of several kids who was nearing 50, but he's still in his late 40s, was in great shape. I mean, this guy, 5% body fat, ran miles every day, getting ready for the Ironman. He was actually kind of proud of the fact that at his age, he was in such great shape. And he could outrun guys who were, 10, 15 years younger than him. He was in shape, man. And then he had a stroke. And he couldn't tie his own shoes. To move his legs off into the side of the bed, he had to have help. And he had to learn to do life over again. He had to learn how to tie his shoes. He had to learn how to walk. He had to learn how to take that next step. And he had to have help going to physical therapy to be able to even take the next step. He who had ran all these miles and was in such great shape, all of a sudden he had to learn to do life all over again. See, when you come to Jesus, you have to learn how to do life all over again. And the way we have been living and how great we thought we were and our 5% body fat or whatever it is that we exalted in our pride, etc., in Jesus' sight is pretty worthless. Because there's nothing there that is of eternity. There's nothing there that'll last past your death. And so greatly humiliated by his circumstances, this man learned to walk again, which eventually did happen. But he said he's completely humiliated. You see, he had to start small, but he started now. He had to start small, but he started now. You see, every time we walk this life with Jesus, he causes us to make adjustments and to learn and to grow again. And perhaps what worked in your last season of life isn't going to work in this season of life. So what you did when you're exalting, you're saying, yeah, Jesus and me. I remember back in 2014, or maybe it's 1994, or maybe it's 1984, when God and I did this great miraculous thing. But you know what? You're not there now. So what is he doing with you now? What are you doing with Jesus now as you follow him now? So a guy is on a great journey and he comes to this river, and it's a great river. It's very wide and it's deep and the current is fast. And he's trying to figure out, how do I get across? So he's walking up and down and he's looking for a bridge. He's looking for anything that'll help him get across this bridge, and he can't find anything to help him. And finally he says, you know what? I'm going to have to do this myself. So he cuts down a tree and he begins to form a canoe. And it's taken him a long time to make this canoe, but eventually he does. And he tries it out on the side of the river and finally says, okay, I think I can get across. So he gets in this canoe, and sure enough, he makes it across, barely. And he gets it across, and as he says goodbye to the canoe, he's walking away and he's thinking, you know what? What if run into rivers again. I'm going to need that canoe. So he takes it, and he takes a rope, and he straps it to himself, and he pulls the canoe out after him. But the terrain is so uneven, and when it rains, it's muddy weather, and the rain fills the canoe, and it's now even heavier, and he's straining, and he has to go so slow, and he's dragging this canoe after him, and after a while, he's thinking, why am I doing this? Because this is what helped me before. This is what I did before. This is what worked before. And so in our history with God, sometimes we say, well, God, this is what I used to do. This is what happened before. This is what I used before. And we drag that boat after us. And Jesus is saying, cut that rope. I'm doing something now. There's fresh bread today. There's fresh manna today. Come and eat at the table I've set today. Stop dragging that thing that you celebrated way back when, and step into what I'm doing today. Step into what I'm doing today. I want the worship team to come up if they would. What is Jesus doing today?